And now, it's BoomerLife, lifestyle discussion designed to make your life more engaging, meaningful, and complete. Celebrating the baby boomer generation, this is BoomerLife on CIL 650.
Don't you know I heard it through the grapevine? Not much longer would you be mine, baby.
Hey, and welcome to the show. This is Boomer Life on CIL 650. I'm Zach Spencer, and today we're speaking with Dr. Ted Venema from NexGen Hearing about hearing loss and specifically about cognitive decline. Dr. Ted Venema, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
And let's give a little background on yourself and NexGen Hearing before we get into a very interesting topic. Explain your background and how you hooked up with NexGen Hearing.
Oh, okay. I'm an audiologist. I studied audiology at Western Washington University in Bellingham, and then moved out east to Toronto and worked for a few years at the Canadian Hearing Society there. And then decided I'd want to become a post-hole digger or a PhD. I wanted to get further education in audiology, so I studied further and taught at Auburn University down in Alabama and at Western University in Ontario. And then I started a 2-year college program in hearing loss and hearing aid fittings, kind of like an optician program. And I've known Mark Hambley, the CEO of NexGen Hearing, for years, and I always harbored a desire to move back to the West Coast. And one day I inquired of him if he knew of any position or work out this way, and he said, well, why don't you come aboard NexGen? So I did.
And did you actually run a storefront?
Yes, I did. I ran a store for 1 year here in Victoria at the Gordon Head location, and but I still remain with NexGen more on a contractual basis. I do a lot of their presenting and radio shows like this and television once in a while. So this is now my new role with NexGen. I'm no longer an owner of a retail outlet. Those who don't do it talk about it. Well, that would be me.
Well, that's the perfect role for you because as people are going to hear as we go through our conversation, Dr. Ted Venema is excellent at taking ideas and concepts and anatomy and explaining them in a very simple and down-to-earth way. So that makes my job easy. Dr. Ted. I appreciate that. So I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this, and they maybe know people with hearing loss, especially as people get older, but they're maybe not making that connection with cognitive decline. So maybe let's start up with what cognitive decline is and how it relates back to hearing loss.
Well, cognitive decline is really like a progressive, kind of like a global impairment in thinking, understanding, learning, remembering. And it is associated with dementia. Some 60% of dementia is caused by Alzheimer's. But cognitive decline, in 2 words, is really essentially what the 2 words are: a lowering of your ability to think and process and remember. And recent research has shown that there seems to be somewhat of a link between hearing loss and the elderly and cognitive decline. And I'll say right at the outset here, not a cause and effect type of thing, but there is some link between social isolation and increased risk of acquiring dementia or cognitive decline.
Now, cognitive decline is part of the aging process, but then you have on top of it layers of things like Alzheimer's, which accelerate that, right? Yeah,
you do. And there's greater and lesser degrees, of course, of cognitive decline. I mean, that much would be obvious. And I think just to draw one point home is saying that it's not like hearing loss causes cognitive decline, because otherwise young people with hearing loss would be walking around with cognitive decline and dementia, and that simply isn't the fact. So it's more important that we look sort of at what the research is actually showing, what it really is saying about the relationship between hearing loss and dementia, or hearing loss and cognitive decline.
And what is it saying?
Well, it's just to show some statistics here as we talk in this first segment. I mean, you've got like 10,000 people in the USA turn 65 every day. Mm-hmm. Now, you divide that by 10, and you get, because to match Canada's population, because we have a tenth of their population, and 1,000 people a day reach the age of 65. Mm-hmm. And like 5 million Americans over 65 have dementia. I mean, this is expected to triple by 2050. So, and dementia prevalence tends to double every 5 years after the age of 60. In other words, 5% of people 65 and over have it. 40 to 50% of people over 85 have it. So, and then when you talk hearing loss, that may be the cognitive decline thing, but hearing loss, mild to moderate hearing loss, 40% of people 65 and over have a significant degree of hearing loss. Most hearing loss is mild to moderate in degree. You can still hear one-on-one, but background noise will really throw you off. And people talking in another room will really knock you for a loop. You won't be able to follow. And
those are the people that are easiest, are affected the most by hearing aids, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're helped the most.
By far the biggest population of people who wear hearing aids have mild to moderate hearing loss, and it's as common as the day is long. I've always called it the trouble with treble. Mm-hmm. They can't hear high pitches, and when you can't hear high pitches, words that sound alike are going to be missed. Words that rhyme, dishes or fishes, kittens or mittens. I mean, and you know, the word for that's called presbycusis, like Presbyterian as in Church of the Elders. Presbyopia, your arms aren't long enough to see the page. Presbycusis hits you when you're about 65. You start to lose an ability to hear high pitches. It's very, very common.
So why do you think there is this sort of connection between hearing loss and cognitive decline? You talked about social isolation, mm-hmm. meaning people are missing out in their day because they can't hear as well. Yeah. So explain how that might work.
Well, a lot of it is quite common sense. I mean, it's just that research has really looked more thoroughly or more in depth into the matter. But really, it's common sense, isn't it? If someone is on the verge of acquiring dementia, then social isolation, sitting by oneself in a room because you can't communicate very well with other people because you've got hearing loss, well, that's only going to aid and abet things. That's going to make it worse. I mean, a lot of it's common sense, keeping people in the game of life, keeping people juggling balls or playing ping pong with concepts, you know, saying, hello, Jack, how are you doing? Hey, you want to come out and do X and Y and Z? Let's play. I mean, keeping people active and in the game of life is always going to be better for people in terms of physical health, everything. I mean,
so I guess the old saying, a rolling stone gathers no moss, right?
Exactly. I mean, there's so much of this that's quite common sense, but there's a lot of startling statistics that have emerged when people look at it in a systematic, in a scientific way as well. And I guess we'll expose more in this radio show today.
Well, it's interesting because my stepmother, she's an editor for WebMD. I'm sure you've come across as the biggest medical portal in the world. People type up, sore elbow, WebMD, it typically pops up. But there's the other side of it, which is the clinical side, which is just for physicians. And she's in the psychiatric and neurology side of it. And I was talking to her about interviewing you in the past and how interesting it was. And she says, oh, yes, with the neurologists that I have talked to have said to me quite clearly, this is anecdotal, I'm telling you, that there are people who have had hearing loss and have cognitive decline. Once they get their hearing loss sort of in check with the hearing aids, their cognitive decline flattens out. It doesn't accelerate the way it did in the past.
Exactly, and I have research to talk about that specific topic as well, Zach. So I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, basically, risk factors for cognitive decline have been etched out by several researchers as age, depression, diabetes, head injury, vascular diseases like stroke, smoking, and then ... hearing loss. It's one of the documented at-risk factors. And if you can mitigate or kind of lessen those risk factors, well, then your chances of acquiring cognitive decline or your cognitive decline will also slow down. So, yeah, you're right.
So let's just get back to the basics here about hearing aids and just the sort of with itness, if that's not a word, but how with it people are once they get the hearing aids in place. They have this social isolation. They're not able to keep up with the conversation. The noise is too much in the background. They can't keep up with the pace. So often what happens, and I've seen this with own family members, they retreat to the end of the table and they don't take part. And that's what you're talking about. So what kind of personal anecdotes do you have about somebody who has gone through the process of being fitted with a hearing aid and re-entered into the world, and how they change, how their outlook is?
Yeah, that's just there's lots of documented studies about that too. But anecdotally, myself, I've seen it in clinic 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I mean, hearing loss involves relationships. Hearing loss is the sense that not only involves the person who's got it, but it involves significant others in that person's life, because hearing loss is a communicative sense, and communication involves at least two people. So really, you get a lot of relationship frustration and difficulties, marriages, significant others. You get real troubles when there's a lack of an ability to communicate easily. And what we have here is a failure to communicate. When you've got that, Houston, you've got problems. And
but what about the demeanor of the people? How do you see that change?
Oh, the eyes lighten up. They're back in the game of life. Hearing aids are a game changer. And especially if someone's always struggling to hear, like as you said, they're always playing catch-up. They're not sure what word you said, so their mind is always looping. They're always doing that filling in the context, what that person must have said.
Or they try to read lips to keep up, right?
Yeah, they're using the oldest hearing aids in the world, the eyes. And by the way, let no one say you can lip read completely. The most you can ever lip read is about 30% of speech. You know why that is? It's because you can only certain letters are formed at the front of the lips.
Well, anybody that was watching the Super Bowl can tell you that Bill Belichick, his lip reading was very easy to understand. he was swearing like a trucker, and that's a TR trucker. And
that was some game, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they zoomed right in on him, and he said something, and boy, everybody could lip read what he was saying.
But on the reality side of things, like the letter K is said at the back of the mouth. You can't read that. You can read the letter B because that's putting your lips together. So certain sounds of speech can be read by the lips, and most sounds of speech cannot. But at any rate, this guy, yes, I don't.
It's always when they put the camera on them that the coach behind the bench of the hockey game starts swearing, and it's like, there's no guessing what he was saying. All right, we're talking with Dr. Ted Venema, who is kind enough to be on the phone with us today. It's great to have you here, Dr. Ted, and we're going to talk more about cognitive decline and hearing loss when we come back. All part of NexGen Hearing, and great information for you on BoomerLife on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.